Monica Sterling's Secret Service career had ended 6 years ago after an $85 billion Ponzi scheme collapsed while she watched helplessly from the sidelines. Now she was a quiet woman, making a living hemming dresses and tailoring suits in the small town of Pine Valley. But this morning, when a smooth-talking investment firm set up shop across from her tailor shop, they were about to discover that Monica's true expertise wasn't sewing fabric together. It was unraveling the lies that destroy people's lives. Before we dive into this chilling story, don't forget to like the video, share it with a friend who loves history's darkest mysteries, and subscribe so you never miss tales of survival, secrets, and hidden truths. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Sterling Tailors as Monica Sterling arranged her workspace at exactly 6:15 a.m. For 6 years this had been her routine. The same antique Singer sewing machine, the same arrangement of fabric scissors, the same quiet satisfaction of creating something beautiful with her hands. At 48, Monica carried herself with the understated elegance of someone who understood quality. Her silver-streaked brown hair was always pulled back in a neat chignon, and her reading glasses hung from a delicate chain around her neck. She looked exactly like what she claimed to be, a skilled seamstress who had inherited her mother's tailor shop and made an honest living serving the residents of Pine Valley. What the residents of Pine Valley didn't know was that Monica's seemingly simple life was built on a foundation of carefully constructed normalcy, designed to hide a past that would have shocked anyone who knew her as the friendly neighborhood seamstress who remembered everyone's measurements and always had fresh coffee brewing. But Monica had a secret that would soon change everything. Her first customer was always Mrs. Eleanor Hendricks, an 82-year-old widow who had been coming to Sterling Tailors since Monica took over the business. Eleanor was having the sleeves shortened on her late husband's jacket, which she wore to church every Sunday. "Good morning, dear," Eleanor called out with a wave as she entered the shop. "How's my favourite seamstress this beautiful morning?" "Good morning, Mrs. Hendricks," Monica replied warmly, her voice carrying the gentle authority of someone who genuinely cared about her customers. "The alterations on Harold's jacket are ready. Let me get it for you." As Eleanor examined the jacket, she chatted about her week. "You know, Monica, the strangest thing happened yesterday. A young man came to my door with the most wonderful investment opportunity, something about green technology and guaranteed returns." Monica's hands stilled on the fabric she was folding. 22 years of training made it impossible not to notice the key phrases: investment opportunity, guaranteed returns, targeting elderly residents. "What kind of investment, Mrs. Hendricks?" Monica asked casually, though every instinct she possessed was suddenly alert. "Oh, something called GreenTech Investments." The young man was so polite, so professional. He said I could double my savings in just 6 months with no risk at all. Monica felt her chest tighten. No risk, guaranteed returns, elderly targets. The pattern was as familiar as her own reflection and far more dangerous than Mrs. Hendricks could possibly understand. What Mrs. Hendricks didn't know was that Monica had spent 2 decades hunting people who made exactly those promises. "Mrs. Hendricks," Monica said gently, "did you give him any money?" "Well, not yet," Eleanor replied, folding Harold's jacket carefully. "But I'm thinking about it. My social security doesn't stretch as far as it used to, and Harold's pension, well, inflation, you know." The young man said he'd come back today for my decision. Monica's mind raced through possibilities, each more troubling than the last. She reached for her phone to check something, then hesitated. The last time she had investigated what seemed like a simple financial scam, her suspicions had been dismissed. And 6 months later, 50,000 retirees had lost their life savings. But this time was different. This time, it wasn't just a case file. This was Mrs. Hendricks, who brought Monica homemade cookies every Christmas and talked about Harold as if he were still sitting in his favourite chair. "Mrs. Hendricks," Monica said carefully, "would you mind if I asked you not to make any decisions until we can talk more? There are some questions I'd like to ask about this investment." Eleanor looked surprised. "Monica, dear, you sound like you know something about investments. I thought you were always focused on sewing." Monica managed a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I read a lot, and sometimes things that sound too good to be true." Usually are. Eleanor finished with a knowing nod. That's what Harold used to say. All right, dear, I'll wait. But why are you concerned? Before Monica could answer, the bell above her shop door chimed. A man in his early 30s entered, wearing an expensive suit and carrying a leather briefcase. He had the kind of smile that belonged in a toothpaste commercial, and everything about him screamed professional success. "Good morning, ladies," he said warmly, his voice carrying the practiced charm of someone trained to inspire confidence. "I'm David Cross with GreenTech Investments. Mrs. Hendricks, perfect timing. I was hoping to follow up on our conversation yesterday." Monica's trained eye catalogued details automatically. The suit was expensive, but not quite expensive enough for someone managing successful investments. The briefcase was new, probably purchased specifically for this operation. Most telling of all, his smile never reached his eyes, and when he spoke, his left hand moved in small, controlled gestures, classic signs of someone managing a careful performance. After 22 years of reading liars, Monica recognized what she was looking at, and what she was looking at was about to destroy Mrs. Hendricks' life. "Mrs. Hendricks was just telling me about your investment opportunity," Monica said pleasantly, extending her hand. "I'm Monica Sterling. I own the shop." David shook her hand with practiced firmness. "Pleasure to meet you, Monica. Are you interested in learning about sustainable technology investments as well? We're offering remarkable opportunities for forward-thinking investors." "What kind of returns are you promising?" Monica asked, her tone remaining conversational even as she began the psychological assessment that had once made her legendary. 15% monthly, David replied smoothly. "Guaranteed." Monica's jaw clenched. 180% annually. Impossible. "What company?" "GreenTech Investments, Chicago-based." "SEC registration?" David's smile flickered. "Different regulatory structure. International." Translation: "We're criminals." Monica had heard enough. But what David Cross didn't know was that the quiet seamstress he was trying to charm had once been Special Agent Monica Sterling, the Secret Service investigator who had taken down more financial predators than anyone in the department's history. And what he was about to discover was that some people's retirement from law enforcement didn't mean they'd forgotten how to hunt criminals. "That sounds wonderful, Mr. Cross," Monica said with a warm smile. "Would you mind if I asked a few questions about your company's documentation? I'm always curious about the business side of things." "Of course," David replied, though Monica caught the micro-expression of annoyance that flickered across his features before his professional mask returned. "What would you like to know?" Monica was about to find out exactly how sophisticated this operation was, and depending on what she discovered, Pine Valley's quiet seamstress might have to become something far more dangerous than David Cross had ever imagined. "Well, for starters," Monica said, her tone remaining friendly and curious, "I'd love to see your Series 7 license and your company's SEC registration documents. Just for my own peace of mind, you understand." David's smile froze for just a fraction of a second, but Monica caught it. After 2 decades of watching criminals under pressure, she recognized the moment when someone realized their mark was asking the right questions. "Actually," David said with a slight laugh, "we operate under different regulatory structures for our international investments. Much less bureaucratic red tape, which is how we're able to offer such exceptional returns." Translation: "We're not registered with any legitimate regulatory body because we're running a criminal operation." Monica nodded understandingly. "Of course. And I assume you have insurance for client investments, FDIC or SIPC coverage?" "Our investments are backed by something much better than government insurance," David replied, his charm beginning to sound slightly strained. "They're backed by the fastest-growing technology sector in the global economy." Translation: "Your money will disappear the moment you give it to us, and you'll never see it again." Mrs. Hendricks looked between Monica and David with growing confusion. "Monica, dear, I don't understand half of what you're asking about. Are these important questions?" Monica turned to Eleanor with genuine warmth in her voice. "Mrs. Hendricks, when you're considering investing your life savings, these are the most important questions in the world. Mr. Cross, would you mind if I looked at some of your marketing materials, just to better understand the opportunity?" David hesitated, and Monica saw him make a calculation. He could continue the charade and risk deeper scrutiny, or he could cut his losses and move on to easier targets. "Actually," David said with a regretful smile, "I just remembered I have another appointment across town. Mrs. Hendricks, why don't you take the weekend to think about our discussion? I'll call you Monday." He was preparing to leave, which meant he was preparing to disappear. Monica made a decision that would change everything about her carefully constructed, quiet life. "Mr. Cross," she said pleasantly, "before you go, would you mind giving Mrs. Hendricks your business card? And maybe your direct phone number at the Chicago office? I'd love to do some research over the weekend." David's hand moved instinctively toward his jacket pocket, then stopped. "Actually, I'm out of cards, but I'll make sure to bring some Monday." No business cards, no direct phone number, no verifiable office address. Monica had heard these evasions hundreds of times before, always from criminals who couldn't provide documentation because no legitimate documentation existed. "That's fine," Monica said with a smile. "What's your company's main phone number in Chicago? I can call directory assistance if needed." David's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. The practiced charm was still there, but underneath it, Monica could see the cold calculation of a predator who'd realized his prey might be dangerous. "You know, Monica," David said, his voice carrying a subtle edge, "you ask a lot of questions for someone in the tailoring business." Monica met his gaze steadily. "Mrs. Hendricks is like family to me. I ask questions because I care about the people in this community." For a moment, the room was silent, except for the ticking of the antique clock on Monica's workbench. Then David's smile returned, though it no longer carried any warmth. "Of course," he said smoothly. "Small-town values, I respect that. Mrs. Hendricks, I'll be in touch soon with all the documentation Monica suggested. Have a wonderful weekend." As David Cross left the shop, Monica watched through her window as he walked not to a car parked on the street, but around the corner toward the alley behind the building. Professional criminals rarely parked where their vehicles could be easily identified or blocked. Mrs. Hendricks turned to Monica with a puzzled expression. "Monica, dear, I've never seen you like this before. You sounded like you knew exactly what questions to ask." Monica looked at Eleanor Hendricks, this sweet 82-year-old woman who trusted her with alterations and coffee conversations, and realized her carefully constructed quiet life was about to end. "Mrs. Hendricks," Monica said gently, "before I became a seamstress, I used to work for the government investigating financial crimes. What Mr. Cross is offering you isn't an investment. It's a scam designed to steal your life savings." Eleanor's hand went to her throat in shock. "You worked for the government, but you've always been a seamstress. You inherited this shop from your mother." "I did inherit the shop," Monica said softly, "but I worked for the Secret Service for 22 years before I came back to Pine Valley. And Mrs. Hendricks, David Cross isn't the first criminal I've met who preys on trusting people like you." Eleanor sank into the chair Monica kept for elderly customers. "The Secret Service? Monica, why didn't you tell me?" Monica poured Eleanor a cup of coffee from the pot she kept brewing and sat down across from her. "Because 6 years ago, I failed to stop a scam exactly like this one. 50,000 retirees lost everything because I couldn't convince my supervisors to act on my suspicions. I retired because I couldn't live with that failure." She looked out the window toward the corner where David Cross had disappeared. "But I won't fail again, not when it's people I care about." Eleanor reached across and took Monica's hand. "What do we do?" Monica squeezed Eleanor's hand gently. "First, we make sure David Cross doesn't steal anyone's money. Then we find out how many other David Crosses are working this area." What Monica didn't tell Eleanor was that she suspected this was bigger than one scam artist targeting one small town. The sophistication of David's approach, the professional materials, the practiced responses to regulatory questions, this felt like an organized operation. And if Monica was right, the quiet seamstress of Pine Valley was about to become something she'd sworn never to be again. Special Agent Monica Sterling, financial crimes investigator. But this time she wouldn't be working within a system that didn't listen to her warnings. This time she would be working for the people who trusted her with their measurements and their life stories. This time she wouldn't fail. Monica's phone buzzed with a text from her daughter Emma, finishing her senior year at State University. "Mom, crazy coincidence. That investment guy Dad mentioned is giving a presentation at campus tonight. My roommate Sarah's grandfather already signed up. Should I go check it out? Could be good for my business major." Monica's blood turned to ice. David Cross wasn't just targeting Pine Valley. He was working multiple locations, and now Emma was walking directly into danger. She immediately called Emma. "Mom, what's up?" "Emma, listen carefully. Do not go to that presentation. Do not let Sarah's grandfather invest. That man is running a scam." "What, Mom? How do you—" "Because I know exactly what he is. I'll explain everything later, but promise me you'll stay away." "Mom, you're scaring me. How do you know about investment scams?" Monica looked at Mrs. Hendricks, who was listening with growing alarm. "Because protecting people from men like David Cross used to be my job." The only question was whether Pine Valley was ready for what its friendly neighborhood seamstress was about to become. That afternoon, Monica closed the shop early and drove to the Pine Valley Police Department. The building was small, staffed by Chief Robert Martinez and 3 full-time officers who handled everything from traffic violations to domestic disputes. Financial crimes investigations weren't exactly their specialty. "Monica Sterling," Chief Martinez said with surprise when she entered his office. "Everything all right? Emma okay at school?" "Emma's fine, Chief," Monica replied, taking the seat he offered. "But we may have a problem in town. There's a man calling himself David Cross, claiming to represent GreenTech Investments, targeting our elderly residents with what appears to be a Ponzi scheme." Chief Martinez leaned back in his chair. "Monica, I appreciate the concern, but investment fraud isn't really something we handle locally. That would be more of a state or federal matter." "I understand," Monica said carefully. "But Chief, before I became a seamstress, I worked for the federal government investigating exactly these types of crimes. I have 22 years of experience with financial fraud cases." Chief Martinez's eyebrows rose. "You worked for the government? Monica, I've known you for 6 years. You've always been in the tailoring business." Monica had hoped to avoid this conversation, but Mrs. Hendricks's safety was more important than her privacy. "I was Special Agent Monica Sterling with the Secret Service Financial Crimes Division. I retired 6 years ago, but I know a Ponzi scheme when I see one." The chief stared at her for a long moment. "Special Agent. Monica, why didn't you ever mention this?" "Because I wanted a quiet life for my daughter and myself," Monica replied. "But Chief, David Cross is going to steal money from people like Mrs. Hendricks unless we stop him." Chief Martinez pulled out a notepad. "Tell me everything you observed." Monica spent the next hour detailing David Cross's approach, his evasive responses to regulatory questions, and the classic warning signs of a Ponzi scheme operation. She could see the chief struggling to reconcile the woman he'd known as a seamstress with the federal investigator sitting across from his desk. "Monica, assuming you're right about this, and given your background, I'm inclined to believe you are, what exactly are you suggesting we do?" Monica had been thinking about that question all afternoon. "We need to identify how many residents have been approached, determine the scope of the operation, and coordinate with federal authorities if this is part of a larger criminal enterprise." "And you want to be involved in this investigation?" Monica looked out the chief's window toward her tailor shop across the square. "Chief, 6 years ago, I failed to stop an $85 billion Ponzi scheme because I couldn't convince anyone to listen to my warnings. I won't let that happen to the people of Pine Valley." Chief Martinez was quiet for a moment. "Monica, I don't have the authority to deputize a federal agent, even a retired one, but I could use a civilian consultant with your expertise." "I don't need a badge, Chief. I just need your support in protecting our community." That evening, Monica worked in her shop until nearly midnight, but she wasn't hemming dresses or tailoring suits. She was creating a profile of David Cross's operation, using skills she'd spent 6 years trying to forget. On her workbench, alongside fabric swatches and measuring tape, lay a dozen legal pads filled with notes, approach patterns, target demographics, response tactics to regulatory questions, financial projections that would be impossible for any legitimate investment. At 11:47 p.m., her phone rang. Emma's number. Mom, I'm scared. That David guy showed up at campus tonight anyway. When Sarah's grandfather asked about SEC registration, David got angry. Really angry. He said anyone asking too many questions might have problems. Then he looked right at me and said, "Tell your mother I said hello." Monica's world stopped. "Emma, where are you now?" "Locked in my dorm. Campus security is outside." "Mom, how does he know about you?" "Because I used to hunt people like him for a living." "Emma, I need you to pack and come home tomorrow. Don't go anywhere alone until then." "Mom, what did you used to do?" Monica looked out at the black sedan still parked across from her shop. "I was Special Agent Monica Sterling, Secret Service Financial Crimes. And Emma, I should have told you years ago, but I was trying to protect you from this world. You a federal agent?" Emma's voice was small, frightened. "I was, and now that world has found us both." Monica stared at her phone for a long moment, then walked to her front window and looked out at the quiet street. A black sedan was parked across from her shop, its engine running, windows tinted too dark to see inside. After 22 years of dealing with criminals, Monica recognized a threat when she heard one, and she recognized surveillance when she saw it. David Cross wasn't working alone. This was an organized operation, and somehow they'd learned about her background faster than should have been possible. Monica turned off the lights in her shop and moved to the back room, where she opened a storage cabinet she hadn't touched in 6 years. Inside, wrapped in cloth and hidden behind bolts of fabric, was a secure satellite phone and a business card with a direct number she'd memorized but never expected to use again. Special Agent Catherine Walsh, Financial Crimes Division, Secret Service. Kate had been Monica's partner for 8 years, and one of the few people who'd supported Monica's suspicions about the Ponzi scheme that eventually collapsed. When Monica retired, Kate had told her that if she ever needed help, the call would be answered immediately. Monica dialed the number at 12:03 a.m. "Kate, this is Monica. I know I said I was done, but I need help." "Monica Sterling." Kate's voice carried surprise and concern. "Where have you been? Nobody's heard from you since you left the service." "I've been keeping a low profile in Pine Valley, but I've got a situation. Organized Ponzi scheme targeting elderly residents, and whoever's running it knows my background. I just received a threat, and there's surveillance on my shop." "Jesus, Monica. You've been retired 6 years, and you're still finding trouble." "Kate, this is exactly the type of operation we used to hunt together, but it's bigger than one town, and they have resources I can't identify from here. What do you need?" Monica looked out her back window at the alley where David Cross had disappeared that morning. "I need to know if GreenTech Investments shows up in any federal databases. I need background on David Cross, assuming that's his real name, and I need to know if there have been similar operations in other small towns. Monica, you know I can't run federal resources for a civilian investigation." "Kate, 50,000 people lost their retirement savings last time because we couldn't act fast enough. I won't let that happen again." There was a long pause. "Send me everything you have. I'll make some unofficial inquiries. But Monica, if this is as big as you think it is, you can't handle it alone. I'm not trying to be a hero, Kate. I just want to protect my neighbors. Your neighbors are lucky to have you watching out for them, even if they don't know who you really are." After ending the call, Monica moved through her shop, checking locks and sight lines from old habits that had never really died. The black sedan was still parked across the street, a reminder that her carefully constructed quiet life was now officially over. She thought about Emma, asleep in her dorm room, unaware that her mother's past had just collided with their present in the most dangerous way possible. Monica had spent 6 years telling herself that she was just a seamstress who cared about her customers. But tonight, she realized the truth. Once a federal agent, always a federal agent. The badge might be gone, but the oath to protect and serve had never left her heart. The next morning, Chief Martinez called at 6:15 a.m. "Monica, David Cross checked out of the Pine Valley Inn before dawn. Paid cash, left no forwarding address. He's running." That's what I figured. "But Monica, there's something else. I talked to state police overnight. 3 other small towns have reported similar investment scams in the past month. Same pattern, same promises. Monica felt grim satisfaction. He panicked when he realized he'd been identified. That means we stopped him here. Mrs. Hendricks called me this morning. Said to tell you she's keeping all her money in the local credit union where it belongs, and she's bringing you apple pie this afternoon to thank you. For the first time in 24 hours, Monica smiled. Chief, what about the other towns? FBI is taking over the multi-jurisdictional investigation. Agent Walsh said to tell you good work, Truth Seeker. Monica laughed. Kate remembered her old nickname. Monica, I have to ask, are you going back to federal service? She looked across the street at her tailor shop, then at her phone where Emma had texted, coming home today. Want to hear all your stories. Proud of you, Mom. No, Chief, this is my home, but if Pine Valley ever needs someone to spot the liars and protect the honest folks, I'll be here. Well, for what it's worth, this town is lucky to have you, badge or no badge. That afternoon, as Monica hemmed Mrs. Hendricks' church dress, the older woman patted her hand. You know, dear, I always suspected you were special. No one remembers measurements like you do without being trained to notice details. Monica smiled, threading her needle with practiced precision. Mrs. Hendricks, some skills stay with you forever, and some people are worth protecting no matter what it costs. Even when it means giving up your quiet life? Monica looked out at Pine Valley's peaceful Main Street, where David Cross would never return, and where Emma would arrive in a few hours to learn who her mother really was. Especially then. Later that night, Emma arrived home early, driving through the night after hearing about the arrests on the campus news. She found Monica in the tailor shop, sitting at her sewing machine but not working, just staring at her hands. Mom? Monica looked up to see her daughter in the doorway, backpack still on her shoulder, eyes wide with amazement and concern. Emma, sweetheart, you should be sleeping in your dorm. Mom, the news said a retired Secret Service agent stopped a financial crime ring in Pine Valley. They said her name was Monica Sterling. Emma set down her backpack. They were talking about my mom. Monica nodded slowly. I should have told you years ago. Emma sat down in the customer chair across from Monica's workbench. Why didn't you? Because I wanted you to see me as your mother, not as someone defined by an old job, and because I wasn't proud of how that career ended. But Mom, you just saved dozens of people from losing their life savings. Mrs. Hendricks called me crying, saying you were a hero. Monica looked at her daughter, this brilliant, strong young woman who had grown up believing her mother was just a seamstress who cared too much about perfect hems. Emma, 6 years ago, I failed to stop a financial crime that destroyed 50,000 families. I retired because I couldn't live with that failure. Emma reached across and took her mother's hands. And tonight, you made sure that failure doesn't define you. Are you disappointed that I lied about who I was? Emma smiled through her tears. Mom, are you kidding? My mother is a badass federal agent who became a seamstress to protect me and ended up saving our entire town. I'm not disappointed. I'm incredibly proud. Monica felt something break loose in her chest, 6 years of guilt and shame giving way to something she hadn't allowed herself to feel. Pride in who she was, both as an agent and as a mother. I love you, Emma. I love you too, Agent Mom. They hugged across the sewing machine, surrounded by fabric and thread and the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. The next morning, Monica opened Sterling Taylor's at exactly 6:15 a.m., just like she had for 6 years. But when Chief Martinez stopped by for coffee, his greeting was different. Morning, Agent Sterling. How's Pine Valley's secret weapon today? Just Monica, Chief, and I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Mrs. the Hendricks arrived at 8 a.m. with a homemade apple pie and a story about how she'd slept peacefully for the first time in weeks, knowing her savings were safe. At 9 a.m., a young mother brought in her wedding dress for alterations, mentioning that her elderly father had almost lost his retirement savings to some investment scammer, but changed his mind after hearing about the arrests on the news. Each customer reminded Monica why she'd chosen this life and why she'd fought to protect it. When Emma called during her lunch break, she had news. Mom, my criminal justice professor wants to interview you for her class. She said what you did was a perfect example of how expertise never really retires. Monica smiled as she hemmed a child's school uniform. Tell her I'll think about it. As the afternoon sun streamed through Sterling Taylor's windows, Monica Sterling sat at her antique Singer sewing machine, creating something beautiful with her hands, while knowing that if Pine Valley ever needed her federal training again, she would be ready. She was a seamstress. She was a mother. She was a retired federal agent. But most importantly, she was exactly who her community needed her to be. Sometimes the most dangerous opponents really are the ones hiding in plain sight, and sometimes that's exactly where they need to be. For the first time in 6 years, Monica Sterling felt completely at peace with all the pieces of who she was. And Pine Valley slept safely, watched over by a woman who understood that protecting people doesn't require a badge. It just requires courage, knowledge, and love for the community you call home. If Monica Sterling's story inspired you, don't let it end here. Like this video if you believe ordinary people can become heroes when it matters most. Share your thoughts in the comments about which part of Monica's journey surprised you the most, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss more powerful hidden identity stories.